Hey, where does gratitude like this come from? Where does it, where does Thanksgiving start? Because we usually say, well, it's tied to some good circumstance. So something works out for our life, and so gratitude wells up in our heart. Well, I do think gratitude comes from the heart. But where does it start even before it enters into our hearts? Well, this morning we're going to look at a psalm of thanksgiving, a song, actually, of thanksgiving from the Scriptures. It's found in Psalm 107, and it begins quite simply by saying, "Oh, give thanks to the Lord." Give thanks. Would it help you to know that the root word behind that verb, give thanks, actually means to open the hands? And is that not a great visual picture of gratitude? This sense of open-handed living as opposed to this tight-fisted grip on life that demands it must go my way for me to give thanks. No, there's something about this that's so precious and unique. We're open-handedly thankful to Yahweh. The rest of the line says, "Oh, give thanks to the Lord." Why? For He is good, for His loving kindness is everlasting. And now we see the Father answering the question about where thanksgiving comes from right in the opening line of the song. It doesn't come from good circumstances. It comes from focusing on something else, actually someone else. Gratitude comes from our focus and putting it on God and what He's doing in our life. My dad turned 84 years old on Thursday. Now, that may not sound like a big deal to you, but he started hospice 8 weeks ago. So my brothers and I really did not expect that we would celebrate his 84th birthday with him. And he had a little birthday party in a little nursing home room in a little bed that he's been confined to since July. And it was a big deal for us to watch because for months we have watched family and friends, but also even staff at the facility that he lives in, parading in and out of his room to visit him during these last couple of months. And every time people come in, they enter a room filled with laughter and tears. In fact, I got an email from one of the folks at Fellowship Fayetteville this week who said, "Mark, I now make it a point to go see your dad every week because it's my weekly picker-upper. I go to encourage him, and I always leave encouraged." So my wife and I were talking, what's the secret sauce of that? Because my dad's pretty much of a realist, right? He's a pleasant man, but not a happy-go-lucky guy. He's not the walking dad joke, okay? But the difference has been he affirms and finds something to give gratitude in every person who walks in that room, whether it be his grandkids, whom he adores, or a CNA in the middle of the night whom he's never met, who comes in to do the hardest and dirtiest jobs in a nursing home. Everybody leaves with something he's grateful for. Now, either that comes from natural-born optimism, I don't think so, or it comes from something else. I believe gratitude in the heart starts right here, your focus, what you choose to focus on. And the psalmist says, we are thankful to the Lord, not because we see our circumstances, but because we see God for who He is. And who is He? He says, just for starters, He is good, and He is full of a kind of love for you that the Scriptures call loving kindness. This word loving kindness is it's a really rich and deep kind of robust word. It's even hard for us to find one English word to translate the depth of it. It has these two ideas behind it. It describes a love that is both tender and strong at the same time. It's both gritty and it's kind at the same time. It's so important that 247 times God tells us in the Old Testament that this is what He's like. It's almost as though He's saying, do you want to know what's on my mind and heart right now? Loving kindness for you. The depth of the word is from a Hebrew word, hesed. I've often teased my wife, if I ever choose in my old age to get a tattoo, I'm going to get this word tattooed right over my heart. My fear is that it'll land somewhere in my stomach by the later years, though. So I think I'll skip that and just hold on to the word by faith. The New Testament counterpart to that Old Testament word is grace. That's why the New American Standard translates it loving kindness. In a later updated version, they translate it mercy. The NIV, if you read that in your quiet times, it's steadfast love. If you read the New English translation, it's a sense of loyal love. And if you're old school and love the King James, it's faithful love. And you get the idea, don't you? It's this love you cannot earn. It did not start with you, and it will not stop with you. My favorite description of God's love comes from Ken Boa. He says that the love of God is causeless, and it's measureless, and it's ceaseless. And that's such good news, because if it's causeless, that means it's not prompted from me. God doesn't love me because Mark is lovely. God loves me because He's love. It also doesn't stop with me. If it's ceaseless or measureless, that means there's nothing we can do to stop Him from putting His affection on you this way. We cannot wear God's love out. That's why the psalmist says it's everlasting. We cannot use God's love up. It is never ending. And the reason that we will enjoy God for all of eternity is His love is so infinitely large. Only something that's the size of a container called eternity could hold it for us to experience it. So where does gratitude come from? Not from seeing circumstances, but from seeing that God. From seeing the grace and goodness of God. Psalm 107, give thanks to the Lord, for He is good. His loyal love endures. Let those delivered by the Lord speak out. Those whom He delivered from the power of the enemy. So God's loyal love looks at the people He loves and chooses to go after their enemies. And we may have a host of different circumstances in this room this morning, but we all share the same two enemies. We get up every morning and we fight the same two oppressors called sin and death. And God in His love goes after those enemies. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that He gave His only Son so that we would not perish but have eternal life. He took on those enemies, which is why at a Thanksgiving service, it is best and right for us, even as we begin the service, to celebrate communion, the Lord's Supper, by acknowledging the highest and best act of His goodness and grace. The communion elements will be passed to you this morning. Again, they're double cups, so just grab one set, and you'll find the bread and the juice there. Hold them in your hands, and we will take and eat and drink as one body. Psalm 107, give thanks to the Lord, for He is good, and His loyal love endures. Let those delivered by the Lord speak out. You notice how grateful hearts lead to something? Leads to thankful lips, a verbal recounting of what God has done for us. In fact, Psalm 107 is actually a long psalm, and 40 of the verses just detail the very specific things that God did for the people of Israel. The way He blessed them spiritually and relationally, physically, materially. It recounts one after another blessings, very specific. The only time it interrupts the recounting of blessings is just to interject one line, repeated 4 times. Let them give thanks to the Lord for His loyal love, for the amazing things He has done for people. Remember that giving thanks has a sense of open hands, right? Months ago, I found myself waking before the alarm, long before the alarm went off, almost every morning for weeks in a row. For me, that's the first clue that all is not well in my interior life. What had happened, even up and down, driving down I-49, was I noticed that my hands would be clenched on the steering wheel. See, anxious thoughts had produced tight-fisted, clenched living. One day on the way down the freeway, it was almost as though the Lord said, hey, why don't you do that thing you tell other people to do? He was calling me on my hypocrisy. Because I don't know where I heard this. I think I heard it from a community group 25, 30 years ago, where I heard someone say they start every day with both hands closed. And they choose to thank God for something specific, one at a time, opening each finger until all 10 fingers are open and their hands are in open-ended gratitude and praise. So for the last couple of weeks, just each morning, starting this way, to go back to an old practice in hopes of finding some new life. And I wonder if we might be in the same posture this morning. Could I ask you to bow your heads and take both hands in your lap and make two fists? And then one by one, begin to thank God for something very specific in your life. Until both hands are open. Psalm 107, verse 2 says, let those delivered by the Lord speak out. Would you fill in this simple sentence with a word or phrase? Lord, thank you for blank. What if we were to take this room right now and turn it into a public, open-handed thanksgiving of worship? Call it out loudly. Lord, thank you for your loving kindness. Lord, thank you for. Shout it out. We want to hear you. Lord, thank you for healing, guidance in your hand. Lord, thank you for your family, my marriage. Lord, thank you for fellowship, protecting, I heard, forgiveness, my salvation, Christian friends, worship. Lord, thank you for patience. Lord, thank you for. Don't you see, as the heart opens up with deliberate thanksgiving, which comes from a focus on who God is, you can sense the freedom. And oh, by the way, nothing has changed in your circumstances in the last 22 minutes. What's changed? Your gratitude for who God is and what He's done. Psalm 107 ends with this line, whoever is wise, in other words, these are the men and women who live well. Whoever is wise, let him take note of these things. Let them consider the Lord's acts of loyal love. Take a look at Rebecca's story and listen to the gratitude that pours from her heart.
All through my life, even though I lived a life of sin, I knew that there was something much greater than me, and I knew His name was Jesus, but I never knew how to have a relationship. I thought I was too far gone. I was raised in poverty. Most of my life, I've lived a very broken life. Very, very broken, lost life. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I was incarcerated for credit card fraud. I came to the end of me, completely, totally at the end of me. And I say that that's when Jesus, he reached down and he saved me. April 4th, 2016 is when Jesus totally just transformed my life. He reached in and completely changed my life. I made a lot of changes, a whole lot of changes. The one thing that I had not yet got a hold of, that he was still molding and working on that little potter's wheel that he does, and he does it amazingly, was my finances. And I was attending church on a regular basis, and there was a lady there that was just, hungry for my life. She wanted to know my story, and constant. I was like, you really don't want to know. You have no clue what you're asking, because I was still living a little bit of shame, and guilt. My past is ugly. It's dirty, like the Apostle Paul talks about. He was the worst of all sinners. So she and I started sharing with her and just completely opening up, because it's God's glory story. And she said, I want to feed into your life. What can I do? What can I do? And she wanted just to fix me. You could tell she was wanting to take all the broken pieces. So she said, you know what I'm going to do? The one thing that I know will help is FPU. I am going to sponsor you. I want you to go take this class and get all you can. I was so excited. I was like, I've given every other tool, all these other tools, and these people in the church were loving on me, and God was loving on me and showing me how to live a godly life, and it was so amazing. So when I entered in Financial Peace University, I had filed bankruptcy. I'm a single mom. I am struggling. It's hard to get a job when you're a felon, and with my background, it was super hard. So it was like I was living on $9 an hour, barely making it, but I almost can't quit crying, because it's so beautiful what God does. And but at that broken place, I became so close to him. There's nothing that could tear me apart from him now. He was my everything. I got a message from Megan, a lady with FPU. I had been in Financial Peace University, a few classes. I had to stop going to those classes because of work and the school environment. But this particular weekend, Megan Denman had reached out to me by text and just asked if I would be around the house. That her and the FPU class had got together and had a few things for me that she would like to bring by, and asked if it would be convenient. I thought that was really kind of weird. I was kind of ecstatic. I thought it was really neat, though. It was very sweet. I was like, sure, I guess so. You can, absolutely. When Megan got there, she handed me like a little packet and a little note card, and was like, we just wanted you to have a little something, me and the class from FPU. We knew you were going through some things, and it was Generosity Week. And I was just like, wow, I didn't even really know what to say or think. I wasn't sure what it was. I had no clue, would have never, ever expected what was in this envelope. And she was just nonchalant. She was like, okay, thanks, bye, and just left. I opened the envelope, and instantly I'm boohoo bawling. All I see is cash, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And literally I was crying tears of joy. It was the most beautiful thing ever. And my oldest daughter came and took it from me, kind of like, what on earth is this? What's going on? And I had a friend who was sitting on the couch, and the kids were running around playing. Well, I had walked into the kitchen, one of my grandkids had asked for something, and I was crying tears of joy. But in my heart, in my mind, I was like, God, you are so amazing. It was one of those moments that was speechless. It was such a good feeling. And things were going through my mind of, how do I thank these people? What do I say? Who do I reach out to? My daughter was counting the money. I didn't know, she counted, I think it was $1,000, and she was like, Mom, this lady just came and brought you this money. I said, it was my financial peace class. I said, that was a class that we go to learn how to, deal with money. And I was going to this class. They got together as a group in generosity. This was their lesson that week. They came together to bless me, Allie. And I said, and she was just like amazed. That moment changed my daughter in her view of finances, her faith in God, and generosity herself. I was totally blown away by this. I didn't know, and all I could do was just tell Megan, you guys have blessed me beyond belief. God has truly used you in ways, and I couldn't even explain in how many ways. What they did was beyond what they could possibly imagine. If each one of them just gave a few bucks, it tremendously changed my life, not just financially, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. My walk with the Lord, I grew in faith. My daughter's faith is just unbelievable. She always watches everything in my life now a little closer, because she sees God working. And I think everybody in our lives, this is how I always looked at it, was people on the outside, when you profess your faith, when you claim that you love the Lord, and especially coming from a background like I did, being broken, and then all of a sudden being like a blossom, like this flower blossoming, this transformation takes place. people on the outside, I think, are always watching for something to happen to either prove it wrong or to see, wow, this is really real. And I think that's what most people in my life at that time were watching. So I was really able to profess my faith in what this group of people, men and women that loved the Lord, that loved God, that were pursuing God and pursuing God in their finances, they came together and blessed me. So it's huge what God does in and through people that are willing.
Well, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His loving kindness is everlasting. We know it comes from the grace and the goodness of God. But where does gratitude lead? What comes next? Because God's too good to let goodness just stop. He wants gratitude to beget gratitude, or grace to beget grace. And so remember, the word giving thanks has this picture of living with an open hand. What do we do best with open hands? We receive and we give. We receive freely the grace of God, and we extend freely that grace to others as well. There's no sense of compulsion in that kind of giving. Look at the way the psalmist says it in Psalm 54, verse 6. He says, with a free will offering I will sacrifice to you. I will give thanks to your name, O Lord, for it is good. So he connects this grateful heart to a willing sense of giving. Giving for this psalmist is not a have to, it's a get to. We receive freely from God. We freely give back to him and to others. What does gratitude lead to? I think it leads to a sense of joyful generosity. Listen, we're heading into the holiday season, and we know this Christmas season is a season of giving. Now, we've all been told that it is bad form to re-gift your gifts, right? You're not supposed to wrap up what you received last year under the tree and pass it on to someone else in the family. Can I challenge that assumption? I think in God's economy, it's all regifting. Gratitude is nothing more than the joyful habit of constantly regifting what he's put into our hands. We give thanks because he joyfully chose to put material and spiritual and relational, even emotional blessings, physical blessings in our lives. And so we regift those to others, looking at a way to extend those same blessings, whether they be spiritual, emotional, relational, physical, or even financially to others. Gratitude makes us happy receivers, but also happy regifters. And I think gratitude is essential for living well, which is why the psalm closes with that line. Psalm 107, verse 43. Whoever's wise, let him take note of these things. Let them consider the Lord's acts of loyal love. The wisest people I know live this gratefully. Gary Oliver is a friend of fellowship and a member here. He's also a dear friend of mine. And I remember back in 2009, after he had suffered a string of losses and death, deep seasons of grief, he delivered a sermon here called Surprised by Gratitude. And in it he says, gratitude makes sense of our past. It brings peace for today, and it creates a new vision for tomorrow. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His loving kindness endures forever.